Meanwhile, Democratic lawmakers on Capitol Hill say they've also been left with more questions than answers after receiving classified intelligence briefings on Iran. Our next guest was in the House briefing on Friday, and that is Congressman Subramanyam of Virginia, a member of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. Congressman, welcome to the weekend. So, obviously, the first question is your reaction to that clip of the president dismissing the assertion that Iran hid its enriched uranium before the U.S. strikes.
Yeah, I still haven't heard anything about that uranium and where it is or what happened to it. All it took is 10 trucks to be able to move that, and they'd been talking about strikes on that area for the whole weekend. It probably got moved, but we really don't know. And the fact that the president is so confidently saying that everything's okay is a red flag, because this president loves to stretch the truth. And what's interesting about that whole operation was the biggest risk to the operation was the president himself tweeting. And so, that's where we are right now with our national security apparatus. We have people who are, texting war plans on Signal, intelligence people who are getting conflicted advice from the president, and the president being the biggest threat to operations these days. And I've come away from briefings with far more questions than I had going in, and they were not very helpful, to say the least.
Well, Congressman, that's what I want to dive into, that briefing and the intelligence. What were you told that you can disclose to us? And did it satisfy your need for knowledge about the extent of the destruction of the Iranian nuclear program?
It did not satisfy, me when it comes to the extent of the destruction, because it just seems like there's a lot of questions about how much destruction actually happened. And this administration just wants to tell people it was obliterated and hope they move on. The reality is, though, that, Iran, it's unclear how fast they can make a nuclear weapon at this point. I think what is clear, though, is that this administration did not consult Congress. It looks like they're going to try to consult Congress and the American people even less so moving forward. And it looks like this president is still willing to continue strikes on Iran. From all of that, I just feel like this needs to be something where Congress and the administration, the American people, deserve a say before we are thrust into another forever war.
Congressman, you just mentioned the president alluding to possibly striking Iran again. He said that on Friday in front of some reporters. I want to play that sound for you.
If the intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you, would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
What's your reaction to that, right? This is the president of the United States saying that he would probably, without asking and talking to Congress beforehand, bomb a sovereign country again, even though he already said that everything was obliterated. So I guess square that circle for me. A lot of that's not making sense. Your reaction to what he said?
It's not making a lot of sense to me either. I'll tell you this, though. The justification for not coming to Congress before those bombings was that they were targeted and they were a one-time narrow mission. And so what he's saying contradicts the whole reasoning why they didn't need to consult Congress. And I suspect that he wouldn't come to Congress again for future attacks on Iran or any other country. This was a president that promised, there was a campaign promise that he wouldn't start new wars, that there'd be world peace the day he got sworn in, that he'd put an end to all conflicts, and here we are right now. And so this is a mistake that's been made many, many times in American foreign policy, and I hope we don't make it again, but I will continue to speak out, and so will others.
So, Congressman, one of the ways that, we can solve this issue with Iran is if, let's say a deal is concluded to put all of this aside. On Friday, NBC News had this story with the headline, Trump administration exploring a $30 billion civilian nuclear deal for Iran. And here's a pull quote. The Trump administration in recent days has explored possible economic incentives for Iran in return for the regime halting uranium enrichment, including releasing billions of dollars in frozen Iranian assets, according to three sources familiar with the discussions. in reading that, Congressman, just as a side note, that reminds me a lot of the Iran nuclear deal that President Obama negotiated during his second term. But here is the reaction from the president, from President Trump, about that story. This is what he put on his social media platform in response to that story. Who in the fake news media is the sleazebag saying that President Trump wants to give Iran $30 billion to build non-military nuclear facilities? Never heard of this ridiculous idea. It's just another hoax put out by the fake news in order to demean these people are sick, all caps. Sorry, America, I read that to you. But I wanted to read it, Congressman, because it sort of reminds me of the whole conversation we were having at the beginning of the show about the president's tariffs policy, just throwing numbers out there, throwing deadlines out there. None of it means anything. What do you make of the story and the president's reaction? Have you seen any hints or elements of a new deal with Iran that would maybe solve this question of its enriched uranium program?
Yeah, this was a president that his first campaign came to office promising to wreck the Iran deal, right? And so they had a deal in place. I was in the Obama White House at the time. They had a deal in place, and then he came in and took us out of it. And now, 8 years later, he's realizing why we did it. And so he's trying to do it himself, only worse. And this is a president that contradicts himself all the time, because when he faces pressure, he starts to lie, right? And so I think one thing I've understood about this president is when he's feeling the heat, or when he hears someone counter a policy of his, he'll just start to lie about the policy. We're talking, the recent reconciliation bill. Now he's saying that doesn't cut Medicaid, right? It doesn't increase the deficit and debt. And so once you understand that about the president, we start to square the circle as he's not a truthful president.
Congressman Subramanyam, thank you so much for coming on The Weekend. Still ahead, Pete Hegseth claims he is, quote, taking the politics out by changing the name of the U.S. Navy ship Harvey Milk. Interesting. He chose Pride Month to announce his change. We'll discuss after the